Thank you, Arlen. Always a pleasure to be in this space and appreciate the IPA giving us the platform. Rebecca, I'll flip it to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unlocking Human Potential. I'm super excited to be with you all today, and I look to have some fun. So, we're going to talk about the power of story. We're going to talk about building resilience, character, trust, and transparency. So, we'll go ahead and get started. We like to start with introductions. So, I'll let Mr. LaRosa introduce himself, and then I'll share a little bit about myself.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And so I think for me, the relevant parts that I would like to just share, not give you my whole resume. You can look it up on LinkedIn or I can share it with you. But I think for me today, it's been a classroom teacher. I've been assistant principal at a high school, principal at a high school a few times, ran a school of about just under 3,000 kids. And I always say I had 9 assistant principals at that particular school. To my current role is I serve as a chief of high schools on the south side where they're divvied up into areas. So I'm on the southwest side of Chicago, where I have a team of people that work with me to help support those portfolio of schools. And so super excited to share my experience about story as I've kind of been everywhere from Rockford, lived in Wisconsin, and I'm back home in Illinois in Chicago. Rebecca.
Yeah, and I have a unique experience because I started off in education for 10 years, and I probably climbed every role. So I started off as a paraprofessional, and then from there, I moved to a secretary. From a secretary, I moved to office operations, and then from there, I moved into administration as operations manager. And so I did that for about 10 years. And after that, I went ahead and started my own company by the name of Ignite Change Solutions, where I took a lot of those concepts around equity, storytelling being one of them, but we use that as a component. And we started to drive change. So I consider myself a change agent. And I love to go into spaces such as municipalities, like cities. I love to work in education as that's my first home, but I also like to work in the business and corporate sectors as well to really support all organizations in understanding how they have the power to make change. And so then the last presenters are you. And so we're going to engage you guys a lot today so that this is not a sit and get, but this is something that you feel empowered to share. So please, in the chat, as we're asking questions, we really encourage you to participate. It's definitely a piece for all of us. So this is your first part right here where you guys get to drop some information in the chat. The last time I did this, people were really vocal. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say. But who are you? Tell us in the chat, who are you? What do you do? And then at the same time, go ahead and add in a person who has shaped the leader or teacher or whatever position you're in, who has shaped that for you. Tell us in the chat. I look forward to reading some of that. See who we got. Who are you? What do you do? A person who has shaped your leadership, or if you're a teacher. And we can keep going if not, and then we'll see you guys. We'll kind of revisit that. Who are you? What do you do? Okay, awesome. Okay. Manuel, I'm a science teacher, the STEM department head. I've learned most of what I know from my very first academic coordinator who took the chance on me and I had no experience. I have a very similar story to the next person I'm going to read, who is Shavina Baker. She was my former boss, director of Room to Grow project at NIU, former principal. Yeah, she is a rock star. And then Rebecca, we share a similar name. Middle school, okay, principal. My parents shaped me. Love that. Love that. Awesome. Both of them are educators. Miss Kim, school principal. I'm shaped, unfortunately, but by many leaders. I'm sorry, it's moving fast. Who has modeled less than ideal ways to handle things. I think we can learn from those mistakes too, right? I love that. Miss Jennifer, assistant principal at Freeport Middle School, started off as a tutor, building secretary, teacher, dean. So you understand the many roles. Varied experiences have guided me to who I am today. I love that. Ms. Bennett, special education interventionist, 23 or 27. Vet, thank you for your service. Student and ed specialist, director of special education program. I'm sorry, you guys are moving. I love that. Thank you. Okay. A person who has shaped teaching. Okay. Your principal in Nashville Public Schools. I love that. Hello, Aaron, superintendent, and your parents. Thank you. All right, Devon. We'll keep reading some of those later. Thank you guys for sharing. Keep it coming. We'll keep
Thank
reading
you.
some of those.
All right. And we'll do a couple different times, like Rebecca said, we're going to do the blow up the chat with some things. And please share as much as you're able. We get like people transitioning, or we get might be in different spaces. They're doing the things that I do. You got a couple devices going at one time just because you're super over committed. We get that, but please, as much as you can, engage with us, because today is about really this idea of storytelling as a leadership move, and how could it be an instructional practice to build these things of like resilience and character and trust and transparency, like in a way that makes sense and authentic to you. We plan to like reflect and examine our personal and professional narratives that have like shaped who we are as leaders, and talk about the practices and the purposes that we move with in our current roles as educators. Um, and then we plan to, if we can, apply as best as we can, apply some strategies to create space for student and staff storytelling. And I think that's where like I'll kind of talk about my role as a principal in the past, and then how I brought it to the current space of where I am now. I think we're a tag team this one. So like the best way we can say this, like neither of us are like scientists or medical doctors to where we can talk about like all the synapses and all the wiring of the brain, but we do know something, right, when it comes to stories. And we know that our brain feeds off them, our development of them, our remembering them, our recalling, our sharing them, and the emotion when you hear someone's story.
Yeah,
And so we just wanted
and if
to
I
make
go back
space
and
for this.
I'm gonna go back to the chat, somebody actually said, um, it was Emmanuel said that somebody took a chance on him. And so I'd love to hear that story more in the chat, because that's exactly what we're talking about when we talk about the human brain and how it's wired. Those stories are what connect people, those are our connectors. And so we'll be talking a lot about that in this presentation.
Thank you. And so I think this is one of those, again, we've got a couple of these points built in where we just want you to engage with us, because when you're doing this virtually across different states, I thought we were just in Illinois, but I love that Nashville folks are here as well. Talk to us in the chat, right? So give us a single word um, that that reminds you of a story. And so type in the chat specifically, type one word that reminds you of a story you'll never forget. For example, you could put grandma, football, hospital, lunch, last Thursday, something, whatever you're thinking, just to jog us, jog the memory of what could be there for you. So just one word that's coming to mind of a story, right?
Like 929, graduation, accident.
Mm, okay. Nice coffee. I get it. COVID.
COVID, iced coffee, emotion. Okay. Pregnant. Yeah. Yeah. Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
Right. Um, I'm just gonna keep moving just a bit. Is that okay, Rebecca? We're gonna pause.
Yep.
Are we
Go
good?
for it. Yep.
All
Go
right,
for it.
cool. Thank you. So think about like level setting, right? Set that up for you.
Yeah, let's level set a little bit. As we start to dive in, I like to make sure we have a baseline for you guys. And so we'll start with a quote. And that quote will allow us to guide today's presentation, I love to get into some storytelling, some actual personal stories that we've got to see over time and experience, and it may even resonate with some of you. So let's keep it going and let's look at a quote and let us know what if it resonates with you.
So just like since it's about storytelling today, when I was a principal in Madison at La Follette High School, Gloria Ladson Billings was our leadership coach, right? So for me, that was like Beyonce shows up and says, "Hey, I'm here to coach you." So it was a really big deal. Um, and so we're meeting with Gloria Ladson Billings, and she says this, and then we find this and use it for this particular talk today. Storytelling is a powerful cultural tool for preservation, identity, and critical consciousness. It allows individuals and communities to share perspectives, challenge dominant narrative, and foster deeper understanding. And I remember in that conversation we're having with her, and she's talking about our school and our story and our individual stories and how are they intertwined. She's like, think about this. Storytelling just isn't in education, it's in business. She also said it's in court and law. She's like, it touches every aspect of our society, and it's so important as it does so, right? It's not just reserved for educators, but rather it's everywhere. And she talked about how do we leverage storytelling as a practice. And so when Rebecca and I got together, we're like, let's anchor with this. This makes sense. Um, the why stories matter. And I think Rebecca's going to set this up in just a minute or two very nicely with a story that I think you all should hear from her background involving a student that it takes a turn. So stories matter because they tap into multiple parts of the brain, and we store these memories that are stories, and we activate them, we recall them. Some are funny, some are sad, some are in between. If we think about history and the oral tradition, it's preserved cultures and values and wisdom and whole generations of people, but also it brings human to the table and also can build this idea of trust and authenticity and transparency. We think about like this idea of storytelling, it's about building connection and belonging through authentic, real connections around this idea of empathy, which we'll go into in the next slide in just a second. But I think when we bring students in and staff and community, it creates this idea of symmetry. And it allows us to see students, staff, and community beyond superficial things. Like test scores are important. I'm not saying test scores aren't important, but I think a person's story equally is as important as an ACT or SAT or normative exam. I think that's what we're trying to set up and leverage. How do we do this? How can we use this to move us forward? And I think we used to always do this thing of what's your why? And you take Michael Jr. break time, Google it, it's out there. Maybe you've seen it, hopefully you have. But for me, when I ask people their why and ask them to tell me their journey of what's your why and how does it move you in your purpose, and your what is like your certification, your degrees, what you do for work, but why is it what you do, right? And I think that changes the conversation just a bit. It almost feels like therapy when you get that opportunity to share your why and to go deeper with your staff or your community. And I think the last thing, and just like looking back at past practice, when I've shared my story with my community, with my staff, with my students, you feel this closeness, this sense of closeness that's like really unmatched. And they feel like that they're there with you in a different way. And the next lever I want to just like lean on is this: how can storytelling promote empathy and understanding? And I think what it can do initially is broaden people's perspectives, right? I think it can give people an opportunity to see people and situations in a different way, and also ultimately building compassion and awareness and connection. I think it can also break down stereotypes, right? When we see people who are truly who they are and hear their story from their perspective, I think that helps us say, oh, there's a person here, right? And I think that's what we're setting her up for just a minute. She's gonna tell this story. And then I think the last one is diversity is embraced as a strength and not as something that pulls us apart, but how can it bring us together? Um, just again, read on a page from Michelle Obama. When we share our stories, we're reminded of the humanity in each other. When we take the time to understand each other's stories, we become more forgiving, more empathetic, and more inclusive. And I don't know how to say that better, that just saying stories can help shape and truly define like who we are and help us walk in our purpose. So taking that straight from Michelle Obama.
I love Michelle. Absolutely. So, if we were to reflect on this a little bit and apply this, I want you to think of something with me for a little bit outside of the abstract that I'm going to give you, which is Jasmine. I want you to meet Jasmine. And Jasmine is somebody that I actually know. Um, and what people would probably classify Jasmine as, Shavina in the chat, tell me if I'm wrong here. This was one of her students as well. Disruptive. She liked to talk back, defiant. I remember when we brought her to the office to have a discussion around her behavior. We brought a group of girls to the office because, in middle school, they struggle a little bit with girl drama. And so we brought them to the office and we said, hey, we need to talk through this and we need to work on our behavior and we really need to get this together. And this was her actual words to us. She said, I don't really care because I want to be a stripper. Teachers don't make any money anyway. And I said, that's not true. And we don't want you to be a stripper. But she wasn't really willing to hear what we had to say at the time. And we noticed that behavior worsened every November. And that was the trend. Um, and before I keep going, do you guys remember if you worked in education, everybody has had a Jasmine, does not have to be the profile of Jasmine, but you've had someone in your school that you have maybe had a hard time with, or maybe you couldn't get them to see the light. What did you guys do? And like, were there any ways in which you apply connection, empathy, or support? I know we have like the system side of it, like different tiers, but what did you guys do, if anything, um, if you had a student like a Jasmine? Any thoughts? What did you guys do? I love to hear your best practices on what you've done. Because Jasmine is a dime a dozen, right? There's lots of Jasmines. Their name may not be Jasmine, but we have lots of children that people may identify as defiant, or talking back, or disruptive, or having some behavioral issues. And I just want to know, is there anybody else? And I'll come back to that and check the chat in a few minutes. Oh, actually, I have a couple. Show you care, ask questions to get to the root of the behavior. I like that. That's empathy. Keep showing up every day with care, consistency, and positive lens to grow. Thank you for that. Attend an outside event school to build a better relationship. I love that. And establish a connection. Went to church functions. Love that. Their sporting events. Love that. I listened to her without reacting to her words, what hurt her. I checked in with her and showed that I could be a person who would just listen to her. I love that. Thank you for that. That's interesting for the person that said the church events because we ended up inviting her to church and she became a praise dancer at our church. But we'll talk about that in a minute. I had a student with a mild physical disability who acted out a lot because he felt inferior or the other students were always making fun of him. I took the time to have a couple one-on-one conversations with him and praising even when small achievements. Yep, love that. He started engaging a lot more and wanted, yeah, make me proud. Absolutely. So let's keep going. Let's talk about what this looks like. So there was a turning point at some point for Jasmine, but the turning point came when we were able to ask her, just like you said in the chat, asked her a few questions. And one of the questions was, what's going on? This is not normal. What's going on? I noticed this trend. What is happening? And immediately she broke down crying and she said, my father died in November and it is his anniversary. And so right away, there was actually a couple people who had been through some things as well and were able to empathize in that moment and share their story. And so as soon as they shared their story, with her, we started to see a turning. Her mother used to be at the school all the time. She was even asking for help. She was like, I don't know what to do. Like, we need you guys. We need you to help and support. And so this is Jasmine now. After listening to Jasmine's story, and we were able to really reframe her identity and what she felt about herself. I mean, this is somebody literally that said, you don't make enough money for me. I'm going to be a stripper. And you would have thought she was joking. You would have thought that was a laugh moment. It was not. She was very serious. And she went off and just recently graduated, and she is now a teacher. And so what I think about when I see Jasmine is that we could have gave up, but we didn't. And so this is just the children aspect, right? But adults are the same way. Everybody carries trauma. Everybody carries a story that they did not share today when they came to work. And on the last time that I did the a session like this for IPA, I also shared my story of why I am where I am today. And it was because someone also, Manuel, gave me a shot. And so when I think about Jasmine, and I want to keep going because I really want to tie these connections to it. I think about resilience. Yes, she lost someone, but she had to learn to rise from the pain and keep going. If we didn't show her honesty and tell her the truth, Jasmine probably would not be where she is today. And so somebody had to use empathy, but also tell her the truth, which built character. And her choices began to reflect new values and a new vision. And I remember before she even graduated, she was telling me how she was almost done. She had a whole plan. I mean, her mind was just different. And I think where that came from is trust, safe adults. And I think there's some things that are happening on Devon's side with trusted adults. And I think that it's important that even if we work with grown people, big people every day, the little people are our whys. That's why we show up every day. So, Devon, yes.
Yeah, when you tell this story, like it, like when you said who, like the Jasmine, I'm thinking of like over, I don't know, almost 18 years now, probably 18 different kids, if not 36 different kids. But I think for me, like growing up in Rockford, single parent home, five brothers and sisters. My brother like largely served as like my dad. Um, always looked for that trusted adult at school. And so like carrying that forward like 41 years later, like in the space I work with about 1,300 teachers, 60 administrators across several 20 schools, like we created a system for how can we create a trusted adult for the 13,000 kids we serve, and how can, just like on your schedule it says who your counselor is, Devon LaRosa or Rebecca Francis, then next to that it says who your trusted adult is, and we don't just assign them to you, you pick them. There's 187 staff members in this building. Which one do you go to, right? So I have a 12-year-old. She attends an academic center at a high school. So essentially it's seventh and eighth grade, along with 9, 10, 11, 12. There's about 1,300 kids at that school. 5 weeks in, I've asked her, who's your trusted adult? She's like, I think it's gonna be Miss Mays or Miss Watts. And I was like, pick them both, right? But we've actually systematized and created a way to actually formalize. How can we have trusted adults and not just have it be this thing that we whisper? No, let's name it. Like if Devon's in a bad space today, I really just want to talk to my trusted adult. I got a thing. I'm not in the mood. Or guess what? I just got into Harvard. I want to tell my trusted adult first, right? Like how can we actually create systems? And guess how much these systems cost to create? Zero. $0. In a time of no money, zero. You can take them, you can have them, right? And we can talk more about that later. But I appreciate the call out on that one.
Yeah, and I think transparency is probably the last one that I really want to hit on, which is sharing your real stories. And I think sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable to people and for people, whether it's for judgment or, just not wanting to share. But sometimes that's what heals people. And so I spend a lot of time going around telling everybody about my story and what I've been through. And Shavina, I just saw, she said in the chat, she had a village. Shavina was one of her teachers, so she knows that I am not making this story up. She was one of our students and has went off to do amazing things. And so people were very transparent, but allowed her to also be transparent. And I think that goes both ways, right? And not just trying to be transparent with people with the pointing the finger, but also allowing people to share their truth so that we can get to a place of understanding through storytelling. And so, as we just wrap up this conversation, I want to ask you guys in the chat really quickly a moment that shaped the leader that you are. So, it could be a personal story. I'll tell one of mine while I wait for you guys. Devon, if you got one, we can just hash it up while we see what you guys got. Or it could also be a student who taught you something powerful. Our students can help us, grow too. And then, or a time that you failed forward and discuss a failure or a challenge that you experienced, which is that transparency model that we were just talking about. That also helps people through storytelling. So feel free to drop something in the chat. Devon, you got anything? Is there one of these that you want to talk about? Student that taught you something, a moment that shaped you as a leader, the time that you fell forward?
Yeah, I mean, probably 1,000, but I'll try to give like the shortest one. We had a principal when I was a first year teacher who you could paint the picture that like maybe he wasn't the best leader, but I'm going to tell you, I thought he taught me many lessons. And the number one thing he would say at staff meetings would be, why don't you just treat the kids like they're yours? And so at the time when he said that, I'm like 22 and I'm like, don't have kids, don't know how to treat. I mean, I know what you're saying. And then he backed it up a bit and said, so like a third of his staff was maybe my age ish. And he said basically, if you had nieces, nephews, young people you care about, how would you treat them? When you say that, it changes the dialogue. He's like, each day I want you to come here and approaching this work like they were yours. If your kid needed more help on math, would you help them? Would you get them a tutor? Would you spend extra time with them? If a kid came here hungry, yeah, they're going to get lunch. But if you have those granola bars in your drawer, would you give them a couple extra? If a kid needed something, would you create a system for them to work to get it? And I think that particular principle, like it resonated with me. And again, you could take that comment like, but they're not mine. But here for 6, 7 hours out of the day, they are yours. And so that really just resonated with me, like even to the work I do today. And so I think that's mine. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I would say, I think I'll do the leader. I would say I used to work, I think I told somebody, I told this on the last show, I used to work for Distinctive Schools slash the Distinctive Schools and CICS back in the day, before it became just Rockford Charter School Organization. And my daughter was really, really sick. And she had a trach and a feeding tube, and they had to fly her out. And I remember just thinking about losing my job. Like I was just so scared to lose my job. I was only 21 years old and I just really, or 22, and I just really wanted my job. And I was so happy to finally get into a school and had this opportunity. And then, of course, I get a call that my daughter is passed out at daycare and needs to be moved by flight team. And so I remember at that point not having a choice but to just get on that flight and, go with my daughter. But I'm always grateful that the school and the people around me did not give up on me. They did not take my job from me. They held it even after the time frame in which they were supposed to let me go. They didn't, and they allowed me to move up into leadership, which is how I got my wings in leadership today. And so when I think of empathy and I think of grace, I think of what happened to me. And so when I lead now, I lead from the lens of how someone led me. And so I know the power of that in unlocking human potential because just like Jasmine, I had no idea where I would be if they would have kicked me to the curb at that moment, right? And not only did they not kick me to the curb, Shamina was one of my bosses, they elevated me into one of the higher positions in the school and let me have my wings to fly. And so I'm always grateful for that because I probably would not own my own company today. Shavina actually was the one I remember wanting to go back to the school, and she was like, "Nope, you have your wings now. Go fly." And so that was 10 years of my life that I gave to a place that gave back to me, and so now I get to go and use those same tactics and ounces of love in other spaces. And so I would say that's probably the moment that I would say in leadership good leaders are what build and grow great leaders.
In the
All
next
right,
couple
nobody in the
slides,
chat.
um, yeah, they're still thinking. They're cooking them up. I know. I can feel it. Um, okay, like keep going, and then we'll pause and grab those. Rebecca, you cool with it?
Yeah, yeah.
Stick with us just for a couple more slides. And we have coffee for you at the end. Promise. Watch what's going to happen here. But I think when we think about like engaging staff in these stories and this idea of storytelling, I think what it can do is help move us forward. And I think when we're being reflective and sharing our stories more, and not just today's story day, but how can they come out? I've noticed whenever I say I'm going to share a story, like at a meeting, people kind of lean in. Versus if I say I'm going to read chapter 2 out loud of this book, people don't lean in; they actually lean back. But it's the stories that keep us grounded and connected. And just as you've heard Rebecca's story about Jasmine, I think that's like a powerful one. And I think they exist everywhere in every space we are. How do we go about cultivating getting those out so it can create a space?
Yeah.
I see one in the chat.
Oh, for students, what does it say? For students, never use food as a reward or withhold as a punishment. I love that. Yes.
Facts.
I
Facts.
have a principal who believed in me and took a chance to hire me as a teacher. And that single leap of faith is something that guides my leadership with my staff. I love that, Jennifer. I remember we had a teacher have a heart attack on the first day of school while everyone joined in to do her job and help her until she returned. We worked together and it built a great community and a great school culture. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. That is how you build an awesome culture because now people want to show up to a place that shows up for them. I love that. Thank you for that.
Keep them coming though too. The last couple slides really quickly here. Just we think about storytelling as a lever. It's an opportunity to build relational trust. And so I always describe relational trust this way, very briefly. I trust people that are close to me to pick up my kids. I have two of them. And so on that short list, like Rebecca's on that list, okay? Whenever my kids are in Rockford, you can help out when they're at grandma's house, what do you say? But I always say I open the door for others to join that list. We just have to build the relational trust. So yeah, Rebecca and I have trust, but like, how do I expand it so everyone that I engage with, I can eventually get there with everyone? And so I think storytelling directly um, aligns with this idea of building relational trust because it honors stories and makes space for it, right? And so I love this. It comes from a liberatory design mindsets right out of the National Equity Project, who borrowed it from Stanford. It's open source, but it actually says what it is, why you should build relational trust, and what are the moves and what it can do for your classroom, your school, your district. But then also, like, how could you even begin to get there? And I think my favorite one is facilitate personal connection by inviting people to share what matters to them. And that's storytelling in some cases, right? And
Mm-hmm.
invites a dialogue with each other versus shutting one down. And I think that's important as we build and move toward relational trust. Because we'll often say in a mission or vision or impact statement, here's what we're trying to get to. I agree. Like, I want this too. But the why is important as the how, right? Like, how do we actually do that? How does it show up Monday through Sunday? And I think this is
Mm-hmm.
just a key part that we wanted to mention today. I'm loving this. I'm seeing stories pop in. I want to stop talking to get to the stories, but yeah.
I had a junior last year who tried to jump the first day or tried to jump the day before finals while I was near her when she ran, so I helped hold her down. She got the help she needed. She's okay now. But it just put into perspective how fragile these children are and how you can never know what's going on under the surface. And I've been more observant since then, and I stopped to have a quick chat more often since then. Yes. Yes, and they do. And I think I was just talking to my brother the other day about there's so many other vices as well that we did not have growing up that kids have against them, right? Social media alone creates social anxiety, right? And social, different issues that we didn't have. And so when we see these kids show up to school, especially when they're consuming their cell phones all day, we have no idea what they're really enduring. And so, yeah, that's a really great story. Thank you for sharing.
Appreciate that. Okay, in our last apply phase,
Yeah.
I think,
So when we're thinking about application, we know that this is obviously not a quick, we have this conversation and then you go apply it. But we do know that when stories align school goals, so when we think about how this shows up, you want to also remember that it's not just about, I'm going to tell my story today, right? It has to connect. And so even when I started to share my story, I was very intentional about sharing why I am where I am today, right? And so whatever the outcome is within the school, whether that's the growth academically, equity, and it's really nice when you have different people in the schools or people outside of the schools that can come in and share specifically to the goal to empower and inspire, whether that's professional development for staff or whether that's for students. It's just really nice to make the direct connection to where the goal lies. And so I really like when people look at it from the equity lens or the social emotional learning lens because there's so many angles. I actually have a student right now who's building a social enterprise around social emotional for schools. And so she had a unique experience that she shared with me growing up that has shaped why she wants to create a social enterprise for social emotional learning. And so it's things like that as you start to align the practices and the things that you're looking to solve within your school, that's how you get that future readiness, and that's also how you start to make humans the priority and relevant based off of real situations, or I look at it as like real world learning experiences. That's another way of how we look at storytelling, right? Is it's one thing to have theory and it's another thing to have someone's lived experience behind it. And by sharing those personal narratives, leaders and educators, you guys can cultivate a culture where people belong, just like someone said here. Um, Over time, right, when people are jumping in to support each other, you build that culture by yourself. You don't have to read some fancy book to get there. It's really the people, the humans inside that create these experiences and create these cultures. Want to read that one? Or you read that one? Um, I see someone else in the chat to not prejudge or pre-label. I had a student to mentor and help through the college going process that the counselor deemed uninterested and unmotivated. After just a few genuine questions to establish a trust and connection, I learned that she had a lot of interest, that she could grow into a future career. And I had personal experiences in her areas of interest and we discussed how she could get her foot into the door even as early as high school. The counselor was surprised as how far we were able to get in just 1 hour meeting. That's storytelling. That is, you just solved exactly what we're saying right there, right? Like lived experience and then telling the story, transparency, all of that, right? And I'd love to hear. I hope you're able to track that student over time because I would love to hear the story behind that. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
I think we think about like we intentionally create space for storytelling. It's allowing for this idea of connection, which turns into belonging, then listening. And it's not just like I've listened and then been on my phone, but I'm like, I heard you. I heard you said this is the situation. But like listening deeply, reflecting, like taking somebody's story and like internalizing it and then applying it. And if you're a classroom teacher like I was, you can use stories to inform your teaching, right? Um, I was a history teacher, got to go to Europe like in my second year of being a teacher on like a student trip, an adult trip. I was like through ACIS or EF, one of those companies. But like then telling, hey, when I was in Giza, when I was at the Vatican, like and just like here was my experience, like literally last year. I think stories, depending on how we use them, they can enhance, right? But also they can support and then also help move equity decisions when we're actually saying our lived experience with them. So I think before we go to the next turn and drop, I want to just quickly share about one feature that we used at La Follette, and it was this idea of soul stories. And so soul stories happened during COVID. We invited students, staff, and community members to share their story about a triumph, a challenge, a success, something. And we used Zoom at the time, and it was people would come together on this. It was usually during a prep or a break or a space for just them time, so to speak. And we just had a rotation, and we hear from adults, hear from kids. I remember I shared my soul story. I think 465 people showed up, and you didn't have to go to these. It wasn't like a staff meeting. Everybody's got to be there. I think I had 1,800 kids at the school, 165 staff. But in that particular moment, 465 people opted to stick with me. And then they went like 500, 800, 1,000. People would log into these soul stories. And it was a time for you to share just your perspective, a triumph or a challenge. And the only rules about a soul story was you had to speak from the heart. There was a chance to connect, and it was a chance to be heard. And we always reiterated soul stories aren't for Q&A. So when you lost your dog, how did you feel? It's not for that, but rather you could connect and say, I remember I lost a pet too, like in your head, and say, I'm connecting with you on this, right? Or it wasn't a chance for interrogation, and it wasn't to make it about you, but rather to connect where you could with someone else. And it wasn't for you to fix anything, right? Devon says he's broke. Well, it's not like quick cash at me or Zelle me $5. It was like, hear how I persevered through that, right? Not a chance to solve anything, but listen to hear and to understand, like this idea of constructivist listening. And so we started doing these repeatedly, and they just kind of took shape. I think they still happen. I haven't been there in 4 years, but I think there's still a time for soul stories that they just built it in as a feature, and they didn't discriminate.
Yeah, I love that.
All right, so your turn. Okay, yeah, go ahead. You got it. You're better at this. You get the responses. I struggle.
That's okay. You guys, it's all right. We're actually gonna be wrapping up, but we want to just talk really quickly in the chat. What is one way that you can create storytelling? And I want to, as I wait for you guys, it could be with students, it could be with colleagues, it could be with your wider community. I'll tell something that I'm doing right now with using storytelling, but I also want to challenge you guys to see storytelling as a way that you can even start the day sometimes, whether it's a PD with students. And sometimes that is hard to integrate and implement. And that's why you have people like us who can support with that. And we'll provide our information at the very end. But stories make the work real. And we want to make it real so that people move to action. And so when you get a chance, go ahead and drop it in the chat, whether you are I'll read those in a second. I'll let you guys drop those. I'll give something for me. So, what's one way that I can create space for storytelling in my role? Well, most of my career, I speak for a living essentially and teach, and I use storytelling for everything that I do because it moves people from just a sit and get to action. And so I've learned that no one knows my story more than me, right? And so I tell my story. Sometimes I wonder if I'm telling my story too much. Are people irritated or annoyed by my story yet? But it's what's given to me to share. And so I've been through a lot and I've made it out. And so I try to share as many people or share with as many people as possible the transparency behind that to provide them with action and actionable steps or just to give them motivation that they can too. So let's see what you guys got in the chat. Let's see what you guys got. Using stories, even the one word memory idea as a lead, yep, into our collaborative team meetings around specific student needs. I love that. And it also keeps it positive, right? Like it allows us to start stretching our brain beyond what we typically would do, but looking at it in a different way. I love that. I incorporate a segment called Good News. I love that at the beginning of class on Mondays and Fridays. I absolutely love that. And that's positive. I really love that. Beginning of the day, school announcements, small group discussions during staff meetings. I love that. And it also shifts other people to that place. I love that. Thank you. I do morning check ins with my students. I absolutely love that. And I know that they do too. I'm sure they do because students love that extra one on one attention. So I love that. Morning meetings, absolutely. I think it would be a nice way to start the day with students. Yeah, give them an opportunity to talk about what they're excited about or stressed about. Yeah, and that actually builds trust, right? That's what we were talking about in the training today is that if we allow people to just share what's on their heart and listen without judgment or response, we usually see like some change. So similar in our team meetings at the end of the week. Sorry, move that. At the end of the week, we can go around and talk about successes, frustrations for the week, absolutely, and really emphasize their storytelling, right? Like, so when people just share, you really want to shift people from the idea that they just tell you a sentence, but tell me why, which is what Devon was saying, the why behind it, because the why is what drives the what, right? Why did that happen? I love that. Stories are inspirational. I share with students and staff members frequently. I'm in the halls and the cafeteria daily to interact with students. I'm present and I talk with my with as many students as I can. I love that. When I worked in the front office, I knew every single kid's story and their name, and I would ask them direct questions. How's your mom? How are you doing today? How's grandma doing? And it would open dialogue for them to share. My grandma's not doing good, or my mom is doing good, or my mom's in the hospital, and then that opened more, for me to do their hair or for me to bring them a gift. And so I really, really love that. Story bowl, a bowl with prompts. I love that. I love a bowl option. Pick a random and tell a story based on the prompt. Oh, I like that. That's a business idea too. Create cards for schools. I love that. What's a class you thought you wouldn't like but ended up? I love that. Who are the most memorable teachers? Love that. I love that. I love that idea a lot. That's really cool. What you got, Devon?
No, I think we're looking good. I think we tell them how they can dig in if they want to talk more, and then we can take questions. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a wrap. I always look down at the time, guys, and realize
Yeah.
that we have no more time. But yeah, we're just wrapping up. Stories make it real, guys. And so we love to, hear your thoughts.
So, two things we need from you. We'll give you Starbucks if you just scan this. There's a couple questions. Tell us how we did. Let us know anything that's on your mind. And then we also open the door for if there's anything we can do for you, right? So Rebecca does amazing work around systems and coaching and equity. And then similarly, I work with schools to innovate and develop systems around belonging and trust and affecting adult mindset. And I'm executive leadership coach. And so if there's anything we could ever do, you could let us know. But if by scanning this with your phone now, 10 minutes from now, worst case tomorrow, we'll send you just Starbucks for taking the time. And then also we invite you just to reach out to us, right? For both our emails as well as our LinkedIn profiles, if there's anything we could ever do for you. But if you take a moment and just give us that feedback on the QR, which I'll put back up, but my email and then my LinkedIn, you can find me as well as Rebecca. In a second, I'll just put the QR code. But if there's anything we can do for you, please let us know. Reach out if you engage us as well. And I'll put the QR back up here just in case you need that. Yep, here's the QR. Sorry about that. And then if you're adverse to QR codes, okay, we support everybody. I'm about to put just a fun little link that will do the exact same thing as the QR code. I was with my mom and she tried to do this and like she keeps taking pictures of it. And I love going to death. She's like, I can't get it to go. I'm like, Mom, because you keep taking a picture of the QR. But hey, it's not a problem. Love mom. But if QRs aren't your thing, we just put the form and you can let us know your thoughts. And if you don't like Starbucks, we can get you a Dunkin' too. It's no problem. We support you. But Rebecca, I want to say thank you for staying up with me for 17 hours yesterday, knocking this out. And Arlen, thank you for the platform as always. But thank you so much.
Yes, Devon, Rebecca, we want to thank you both for sharing all these amazing ideas around getting your story out and unlocking that staff and student potential. Great ideas, and so many great ideas in the webinar chat as well. I'll be sharing that with our registrants because I thought there was just some great stuff in there. You guys had them really writing and reflecting in a great way. So the chat transcript I will share when I share the recording to this webinar as well. So make sure to fill out their Google Doc there and get your free Starbucks. Let them know what you thought about this webinar. We've got plenty of time for questions. If there are any you wanted to ask that didn't get addressed during the presentation, now is your chance to type your question or thought or reaction into the webinar chat, and we'll make sure to get those addressed as well. Devon, do I qualify for a Starbucks if I scan the QR code?
You get two. So Rebecca's gonna send you one. I'm gonna send you one.
Yes, you both.
You're good.
Yes, I'll get. Okay,
You're winning.
wonderful.
You're winning.
And like I said, we're gonna be sharing out the ISB evaluation form tomorrow, tomorrow morning when I share the link, and that's how you'll get your PD credit. But make sure to give Rebecca and Devon your feedback into their Google form as well. Looks like we got a question in the chat. I'll let you two take it. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Devon, you've been in leadership for a while. How would you handle
You're
that?
gonna do that. I love that. Okay, so with this question, I love that you said it, right? So it's like the realist in the room. I love this. So here's what I would say. If you've only ever given me a chance to share my story once, you do run this risk, right? You may hear, I got a divorce, my dog got hit by a bus, I went bankrupt when I was 17. I mean, like, you may get someone to literally, we call this just like literally dumping trauma on you, right? However, though, sometimes you frame like, hey, today I'd love to hear your stories around this, triumphs and struggles. But the more you do this and the more opportunity you give people, what I have found is this doesn't happen, right? If Rebecca only ever got 2 minutes to talk to me on the phone, she just tried to cram everything she could fit in 2 minutes ever in that. But if I was like, hey, Rebecca, you have my cell phone number, you can text me or call me, and you have my email. You can reach out to me regularly. Actually, you know what? Wednesdays, that's gonna be our time to grab coffee, and I'd love to hear you. And then maybe you might hear something of mine. So what I've found is the trauma dumping doesn't happen if you give that person regular time. And I know a parent that like literally would tell me every single thing in the world that like, my kid is my, and I'm like, ma'am, I'm calling you every Friday morning. Is 9:30 okay? So I'm gonna call at 9:30. I want to hear about your interaction with my school that I run. I want to hear about it. And like it got to the point where she's like, I got nothing bad to report, only good things. Cool. Thank you. So I think if you put a little bit of parameters on the stories and then give multiple opportunities for that person, watch how the story changes. Watch, but I'm not gonna lie, early on, you might get some heavy stories. Also with kids, to put parameters on it, right? And I always let people know I'm a mandated reporter. If you tell me you're gonna hurt yourself or someone else, or that you're participating in such behaviors, like I will be reporting that. And I think the more you build that trust, the stories will be authentic, they'll be real. But then also, yeah, I mean, I think that will cut down on if it becomes too heavy. But I know exactly what you're talking about. I can think of 9 scenarios right now, but hopefully that addresses the question.
Yeah, I love the
Yeah.
parameters. I love the parameters because I think sometimes when you offer up the expectation, it's easier to shift it when there's an expectation versus tell me your story and then open ended. So I think that's really great. I see anything else? Yes. All right, that was helpful. Thank you.
That's a good call out too. I appreciate that. What happens when stories go wrong, right? That's fair.
Yeah. Thank you guys. You guys were really awesome. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so many thoughtful
good.
reactions in the chat pod. So happy, Rebecca and Devon, for you guys to include that engagement, because that's just so important in these webinars to give our audience a chance to reflect and provide you with some input as well.
Yeah, and if you like Starbucks, this is your time to shine. So please fill it out.
Any other questions for Devon or Rebecca in the chat? We've got them for just a few more minutes. I want to make sure we'll get everybody out of here by 4 o'clock, and I'll wrap up the recording, but just want to check and see if there's any other thoughts when it comes to storytelling in education. Any questions you have for them? Everybody's too busy filling out the feedback form.
That's where the questions are going. And if you, and whatever you, there's a couple spots in the feedback form to ask us something. You can even set up a time to chat with us if you need a one-on-one or two-on-two or two-on-one, whatever you're looking for. We can have that dialogue as well. I'll just pop up emails one more time, just so we still got a handful of folks with us. Rebecca's contact info and how you can find her on LinkedIn. And then if you need me, I'm around all day, even on weekends. All right. Okay, Arlen, you tell me. I feel
That would
good.
look good. I'm just seeing some thank yous popping in the chat.
Thank
No
you.
further questions. So it looks like we are all set to close out. As I said, I'll be sending the recording link, the chat transcript, and the ISB evaluation online form will all be sent out tomorrow morning to all of you who participated in this afternoon's webinar. And then for those registrants who weren't able to join as well, they'll get a copy of the recording, but they will not get the PD credit hour. So thanks for those of you who stuck around for the full hour. You will get your PD credit tomorrow. Just got to enter it into Ellis. And again, make sure Illinois Principals Association is the approved provider that you choose when filling that out. All right, if you want to hover down in the lower right-hand corner of your Zoom toolbar, you will see a big red leave button or exit, and you are free to click that, and that will log you out of the session for today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.